1 second.
Are we ready?
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to EduTalk's 9th live session. I am Shawnee Hardware, and this evening, as usual, we have our co-host, Dr. Annette Walker and Principal Trevor Cole. And together with the panelists, we'll be discussing the importance of student engagement, looking primarily at social, emotional, and behavioral engagement. Now you might be wondering why this topic. We know that during COVID, even though this issue predated COVID, there have been numerous concerns around educational stakeholders about how to engage our students more meaningfully. We also saw with the resumption of face-to-face learning in various capacity, where there's some would say increase in antisocial and behavioral disengagement in many Jamaican schools, particularly in the high school. So with these timely matters, we decided that we will delve into looking at student engagement. It also connects with previous topics that we've looked at, such as working during the pandemic, as well as looking at students and educational administrators' mental health. Okay, so discussing this topic with us today are Dr. Shauna Miller, Ms. Kiva Reed, as well as Mr. Sheldon Royce, and they are both they're all practitioners in the area, in the field, I would say. But by way of introduction, Ms. Kiva Reed has been trained at the master's level in clinical psychology. She is licensed both in Jamaica and in Britain. So with the Jamaican Psychological Society, as well as the British Psychological Society. She has worked in the UK for over 9 years, and she has now turned her attention and focus from therapy to assessment, and is currently working in the special education unit of the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. She also serves her community as a Justice of the Peace since 2018, and we know how valuable the work of the Justice of the Peace is in Jamaica. So thank you very much for your service, Ms. Reed. Okay, and on to Dr. Miller. Dr. Miller received her doctorate in school psychology from the University of Florida, specializing in early intervention. So this is akin to some of the things that we'll be discussing, and also we have discussed in previous work. So thank you very much for accepting to be a panelist, Dr. Miller. As a school psychologist, she works with all ages, providing assessment, therapy, and consultation for academic, emotional, and behavioral concerns. She currently works at Micah Care Center and has a private practice and runs a website, kidspsychja.com, which provides psychological tools for Jamaican families. I must say that just going back to Ms. Reed, that she was actually a panelist on one of our sessions before, and she loves the program so much, I'm inferring that she accepted our invitation to come back another time to share her knowledge on this topic. And finally, Mr. Royce, who is also a past panelist, is here to share his knowledge as well. And he's a trained guidance counselor who's employed with the Ministry of Education's Highgate Primary and Junior High School for over 9 years. And if you recall, Mr. Royce also commented in our last session about the need for student engagement and behavioral concerns. So we decided that he's the right person to be invited as a panelist. He's an outgoing individual, and you'll see that exuberance today. And he does a lot of volunteering. He loves listening to good music. Maybe we can get into that and having healthy conversation. He describes himself as a down-to-earth individual. Okay, now that you know who our panelists are, I will now turn it over to Mr. Cole. I'm predicting the future, Dr. Cole. Mr. Cole, to lead us with the first question.
Thank you. I could just listen to you and just be quite relaxed. Thank you.
Are you talking about my voice relaxing you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our session today. We are just going to get right into the questions. We want it to be engaging. We want you to share your expertise. So my first question to you, panelists, is how would you explain the connection among students' social, emotional, and behavioral engagement? And I'll take the responses in this order. Dr. Miller, Ms. Reed, and Mr. Royce. Dr. Miller?
Sure. So in terms of looking at the connection between our emotions, students' emotions and their behavior and their social actions, I think it's important for all of us to recognize that how we feel internally is very much related to our actions and our interactions, right? So if you even think about the fact that how you feel when you're worried, what you do when you're worried, or what you do when you feel hopeful, what you do when you're excited, really affects what actions you take and how you interact with others. So there's a strong relationship between, just our emotions and what we end up doing. There's a feedback loop that happens actually between what we do and how we feel.
Ms. Reed, you want to weigh in?
Yes, I have to totally agree. From a clinical perspective, and even as we think, we have schools of thought that actually guide us in how we respond to students, how we respond to people on a whole. It's not a student thing, it's a people thing, it's a human being thing. Actions, behaviors, emotions are all interconnected. Cognitive behavior therapy sells that. That is their premise. And so, student engagement, whether it be social, emotional, behavioral, one thing is always going to impact on another. So how a child is feeling will come out in their behavior. How a child is thinking is going to be seen in the emotions and the attitudes, as well as the behaviors that they portray. So there's a knock-on effect. If you can impact on any one of those things, you can change all the other things that is going on with a child.
Wow. Wow, I like that. Mr. Royce.
Well, let me just say that I will undoubtedly agree with the persons who would have responded just now. All of them would have in some way impact each other. And for a child to be wholesome, all those components should be reflective of the other. And if there's one that is lacking, and if you're not healthy emotionally, then it's going to come out in how you socialize with your peers. Yes. It's going to come out in terms of how you respond to academics. Hence, all of them have to be reflective of each other. All of them are needed. There shouldn't be the measurement for all have to be equated equally. And on that premise, it's very important. It's just what is also important is that we understand the dynamics of having a rounded child who is well emotionally so that they can do well academically.
Wow, thank you, panelists. Dr. Walker, I'm sure she will continue as we explore student social, emotional, and behavior engagement. Dr. Walker?
For sure, thank you. So for those who are just coming in, thank you so much for joining. our 9th session. We're looking at how to improve students' social, emotional, and behavioral engagement. So we have listened to all our 3 panelists provide a little description around these 3 components. And so when we think about students who are perhaps having problems managing their emotions, you know, they're not socially adept, and some of them, as you all say, that their connections, they're all interconnected. So my question is then, how can educators integrate aspects of their lessons to promote students' emotional and social engagement? And
I can jump.
I'm gonna start with Keva now.
Okay, all right. Not a problem at all. So if we think, remember, sometimes we make these things bigger than they need to be. And that's why people think psychologists are some big phantom people. But these things occur in everyday life. Think about it. If we are trying to teach social skills, how do we teach that in a social setting? These are when the teachable moments occur. When the child is there playing with the ball and want to have the ball to themselves the whole time, that is when the teacher or the parent gets to say, no, man, you need to share now. It's in the doing, it's in the action. This is when a child learns leadership, conversational skills, expressive skills. I learn how to express myself and say please and thanks. Remember, our parents called them the magic words. Incorporation skills, you know, how to do teamwork, how to work with each other. These social skills are actually impacting our behaviors. There's a big thing that was going on last year with emotional intelligence. Part of that comes into this because, of course, my self-awareness, my ability to actually self-reflect on what happened. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? How did Johnny respond to me? How did Mary treat me afterwards? All of those things actually become important to me because I learn how to know, socialize with persons. And I think that's why we're having so much problems now in schools that we have returned, because it's 2 years of no socializing, of the skills not being influenced, assessed, reflected on, you know, developed. And so now students are like, oh, I want it and I want it now, not realizing that they're not at fast food place. So, you know, it can't happen now. You have to actually work through the process of give and take and compromise and using your leadership skills for good and using your words and conversations and not, you know, so these things can actually be brought into play in a classroom setting as the students do teamwork and group work, and as we actually try to get them to do more clubs. What happened to those character building clubs that we used to have that would teach students how to work with each other, how to engage with each other? Now is the time for all of that to come back into play. Our 4 parts, our brownies, our girl guides, you know, our Bible clubs and so on. So I'll let others chip in, you know.
And if I may,
getting me excited, sorry.
Hold on, Mr. Royce. I'm happy that you touch on the whole social, you know, the whole emotional intelligence piece right there. And you have touched on so many little nuggets. So we're going to continue the conversation. Mr. Royce, I know that you're anxious to get in, but, you know, I'm going to put the ladies first for right now. Dr. Miller.
All right.
Socialization.
Right? Dr. Walker, you know.
Dr. Miller, go ahead.
Of course, Kevin said a lot of gems in what she just talked about, and I agree strongly. I think the focus, when we think about lessons, how can teachers incorporate these into what Kevin said about there being teachable moments is what they have to kind of key in on. It's not so much, honestly, that you have to have a special, although it won't hurt to have special social skills curriculum, not at all, that would be great. But what teachers need to do is be intentional about using some of the moments that naturally occur during the school day. So instead of, I think what happens is that the teachers aren't trained to necessarily leap in when they see something, but that's what they need to do up to high school. I mean, it doesn't have to be just primary school is more likely, but even in high school, use the moments of conflict, use the moments of when you see someone down, you can jump in and you can be real and you can use those moments to teach about emotional intelligence, about social skills, about conflict resolution. You can use those moments. It's just that teachers have to take that initiative and jump in.
So if I may, you're currently, for those of us who are just coming in and you may not have heard Dr. Miller's brief bio, she's at Michael, right, Dr. Miller? Okay.
Yes.
Could I reread the Bible?
I'm sure it's a bit of a question, I know.
No.
So then for some of us here, I know that there are a few participants here who are also my colleagues. They're at the university level. Do you see some of these issues happening there? Can you just expound a little bit? For
I should point out, actually, I'm working at the Michael Care Center, which is
Michael Care
different
Center.
from the university.
Okay.
Mhm.
So then can you say, do you think, like in terms of, say, a professor at the university level, would that be applicable there, or is it just?
I think there are always opportunities to. I think it's a matter of using some courage as a teacher, as at any level, to kind of address what you see and not ignore it. So there are always moments, even at the university level, where if you notice an issue, that you can just be upfront and say, I'm going to intentionally talk about this issue because I think it's something that's affecting my students.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we're going to move on to Mr. Royce.
The male panelist.
Yes, I see that I'm being ignored, but I love them nonetheless.
Is this reverse stereotyping?
All right, it is during these unprecedented times that I think that there has to be a recognition that our knowledge of even some of the basic fundamentals that we have learned in terms of social learning theories.
Yes.
Just to understand these theories and so we can observe certain behavioral patterns will give us insight as to some best practices that we can install in terms of, and just to observe, it will just give us an awareness as to some of the issues that exist. And this knowledge of these theories is going to catapult us into practices that we can institute, practices that we can use to integrate, not just for academics, but in terms of emotional intelligence and all of those things.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I love how you made the connection to emotional intelligence. And my question, following on the heels of Dr. Walker's question, is, and also connected to your particular area of expertise, Dr. Miller, looking at early intervention. And you also mentioned it, Keva, around CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is what are the my tongue is being twisted. What are the warning signs educators can use to identify and treat students who exhibit social and emotional challenges? So I'll start with Mr. Royce. I know they
you got it right.
I've left you for last. So could you start us off, please?
All right, thank you. Patronizing, we'll get a place, this doc.
I know.
All right, so some of the warning signs is that children become very isolated. Children do not really want to participate in social conversations. They become very withdrawn. And as educators, these are signs that we have to look out for. Look for the fact that they seem very misplaced, they seem spaced out. They're in the classroom and their focus is not on academics, but they are there in the physical form, but they are not there mentally. And these are signs that we have to pick up on. And these are signs that as soon as we notice them, we have to deal with them in the shortest possible time. And in dealing with them, we have to understand that there is dynamics, and these dynamics don't just involve us asking questions. It goes further than that. It involves sometimes even going into the homes of these persons. And a consummate educator doesn't just limit themselves to academics, but they go beyond just academics. They involve themselves in just the complete person.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and this is true. And this is why the different forms of engagements become important then. Thank you, Dr. Miller, and then Miss Reed.
Sure, I think Mr. Royce definitely mentioned the kids who seem withdrawn and isolated and spaced out. Absolutely. I think the thing that you really have to look for is behavior change is really what you need to look for. Because on the other hand, you can have children who are going through a difficult time or emotionally or whatever it is, but act up instead, or like suddenly become more irritable or more angry or more outgoing. Honestly, I think it's behavior change that you kind of need to note for a child to say something seems amiss. So I need to kind of check in to see what's going on, because they might seem more anxious, more controlling, they seek more reassurance. It's really the change in behavior that you kind of need to pay attention to.
And this is good. And if I can ask you, and I know we want to keep it moving, but since you look at early intervention, is there a particular stage in which we're keen to look at these type of behavioral changes, or does it not matter?
Well, I mean, emotional problems can happen at any age. So really, the behavior changes at any time. In high schoolers, it might look differently in younger children. Actually, younger children are more prone to seem irritable than anything else. Irritability is usually a really good sign of emotional problems in younger children. But it's like I said, the keying into behavior change is really what's going to be the key at any age.
All right, thank you. And I see you're nodding along, Miss Reed.
Yes,
so
yes, what she said.
I agree with the good doctor.
Because that is the only answer. The changes in behavior are the giveaways. Remember, children cannot necessarily express what they want to say. And so you're gonna find it in the behaviors. Sometimes they don't even know who to trust. Somebody has told them this is the way it should be. They know it's a lie. A lot of times there's this cognitive dissonance. That's a big word for, the mind and the heart are in contention with each other. What they know to be true and what they feel is true are two different things. And so sometimes they're doing something, but they're just not comfortable with the thing. A lot of times, and we have to remember that we are in a culture where a lot of the times children are actually told to be seen and not heard. And even if we don't say it, or actions, remember, it's not just children that are having their actions speak for them. So when an adult looks at you as you open your mouth, you kind of get the message. Don't say a word. And so sometimes they can be forgotten with their emotions, with their stressors. People don't realize a divorce in a house means everybody is experiencing a divorce. A financial loss in a house, everybody is feeling the burden of that. And so it's that change that we have to look for, because sometimes, and that's why teachers are so important. It's not just the lessons. They are the ones that are standing there in the place of objectivity, looking at their class and going, come here, Johnny.
Something not right.
You don't look like you usually. What's going on? I didn't get any food today. That is how the guidance counselor might even come to realize that that family has a financial crisis going on, because the teacher now has picked up that 3 days in a row I've had to make accommodations to get Johnny some food. It's watching that change in behavior. And like Dr. Miller said, sometimes the quiet child becomes rambunctious and rowdy. Sometimes the rambunctious and rowdy child becomes so quiet and withdrawn. Sometimes the child that is ever present, hand in the air, is nowhere to be seen in the classroom. Why are you not here? Why are you loitering outside? It's the changes in behavior that are the giveaway for children.
Okay, and that takes us into our next question, which I'll ask Mr. Cole to host to the panelists.
Thank you. Despite the Ministry of Education here in Jamaica introducing the Alternative Pathway to Secondary Education program, this program was designed to promote and implement an inclusive approach to support students who are at risk. There still remain behavioral issues such as aggression, panelists, ongoing distraction, truancy, among others, thus leading to some of our students being a part of the juvenile system here in Jamaica, which is a major concern for us all. My question to you, panelists, is how can we improve the behavior of students who are not engaged in the teaching and learning process? And I will start with Ms. Reed and then Mr. Royce.
All right, so I like the saying. When I came back to Jamaica and saw it, I really do like it. Every child can learn, every child must learn.
Yes.
What they're learning might be different, but
Yes.
every child can learn. A child with cerebral palsy who cannot move their arms doesn't mean they don't have the intellectual capabilities.
Mm.
Yes, a child that has intellectual disabilities may be able to learn colors. They may not be going to university, but they can learn colors, they can learn the alphabet, and I'm sure Dr. Miller will agree with me as soon as she gets here, because she's into the school psychology and the curriculum thing. But I think we need to start from the position of assuming that every child can learn. If we start from there, then we see the child we want to see in 5 years' time, because we're teaching everyone as if they have the capability to learn. No, I just need to figure out what can you learn and work with you from there. We need to make sure that the expectations are clearly stated and they are appropriate and visible. We keep moving these goalposts for these children. We have to be, okay, this is the behavior that I want to see. This is what we expect from you. These are the consequences. The goalposts cannot be shifting every minute. And so it just builds frustration because I never know where I stand. It happens in the home. It will happen in the school. This is what we require of you. This is the math homework. If you don't get the math homework right, this is the consequence. You will have detention. You will have 5 more to do. Let me know where I stand. If I choose not to do it, then I am choosing the consequences which you told me of. You can't then take away my phone. You said detention.
Yes, yes, clear expectations.
Clear, appropriate, and visible. Then we need to use prompt hierarchies. So guess what? We cannot be aiming for punishment. We have to aim for prevention. Let me work with you to see where I can get you to be. It shouldn't be that I wait and I sit there. I've seen teachers sit there and then wait for the child to fail. And I knew you were going. Then if you knew I was going to fail, why did you not come and help me to sort it? What is this about? We have to these are the hierarchies. These are the positions. Everybody has a role to play. This is what I am trying to get you to do. Help the children to see their future. This is where you're aiming for. A child will not want to learn math because they don't see the need for it.
Yes.
I've seen children gone now that came back from COVID and they're not going to school. Chinaman is paying me $10,000 a week. When did $10,000 a week become good money? In his head, it is because it's feeding his family. But nobody has sat down with him and said, okay, what you think about 50,000 a week? Eh?
Yes. Yes.
Say what? How I get that? We have to make it practical. I know even in Region 3, the math team, they're trying to move math into everyday life. How much does the yam weigh? What do you need to do? How much are you going to pay for? Move things into everyday practices that students will actually see the need for the learning. Yes. And so I'm not engaging with it because I don't see the need for it. And always think of a behavior's function.
Yeah.
What is a child trying to tell you when they're loitering outside? We've said it. We say, look for the changes in behavior. What are those changes trying to tell us? This is how we can get the kids back to engaging.
Okay.
Great. I am going to now invite Mr. Royce, who will, I'm sure, follow up on some of the suggestions that you have made, Ms. Reed. Mr. Royce?
Oh,
I'm in
before
so
we said
much.
Dr. Miller before, I think we had mentioned Dr. Miller before. Sorry,
No,
Mr.
yes,
I am
no.
not a part. I'm not a part of the ladies before gentlemen crew. I
It's
just
fine.
remember
Yes.
that Mr.
Royce.
Cole.
Yeah,
I
Mr. Royce
said-
and then Dr. Miller.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I did indicate.
yeah, man.
Okay.
Yes. Go ahead,
I mean,
Mr.
so-
Royce.
I
I look it out for you. I look it out for you, you know.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I will say that I must agree a lot with Mr. Reed.
Yes.
You know, one of the things that I would have noticed off the bat, and from a personal perspective, I relate to the children who, I think that COVID has brought much dismay. It would have brought a lot of distress to the children, especially because to this point, I don't think there's anybody that truly understands the dynamics of COVID, and nobody has fully tapped into what really COVID has encompasses.
Yeah.
And because of that knowledge, lives would have changed in a lot of ways. Employment, having to stay home. So there's a host of issues that these children would have had to deal with.
Yeah.
And if as educators, we can demonstrate unconditional positive regard for the
Right.
children, it will give them a sense that, you know what, Miss or Sir is not just doing his job to get a salary, but Miss or Sir is really concerned about my welfare. And
Yep.
when that message is really sent to a child or a parent
Mhm.
of that child that they're having issues with, when that message is sent clearly, then I am sure that there'll be a sense of indebtedness, and that parents will recognize, or that child will recognize that surely this teacher wants the best for me, and then understand that this teacher wants the best for me. Efforts are going to be made to even participate in learning. The dynamics of COVID goes beyond just having to resort to the virtual platform. And as educators, we don't get to see the children in real time to understand sometimes what they're going through. But when we are able to really go beyond just doing my job, and I think that is one of the reasons why a lot of teachers are failing, and that is why a lot of students are behind. I think we need to get from the place where we're doing a job, but we need to just actively do our job and be intimate and passionate about what we do. I know that sometimes this can have overwhelming effects on us as educators, but once we measure properly as to how we are going to do this, and then once we're strategic and strident, I think we can achieve a lot.
Yeah, our teachers are listening in, and they are the ones who are dealing with the challenges of behavior, the maladaptive behavior and so on in the classrooms, and the suggestions and that you're putting forward of how they can improve students' behavior, I'm sure will be well received. So let us continue with Dr. Miller as we put forward some suggestions to our teachers as to how they can improve students' behavior. Dr. Miller?
Of course, I agree with what Keva has said and what Sheldon said. Especially what Mr. Roy said about the basis for behavior change, honestly, is a strong connection with students.
Yeah.
That is the basis of behavior change. Or yes, it's having for parents and for teachers is that they need to have a strong, positive connection with their kids. I want to say though, in terms of how do you address or improve behavior, one of the steps, that there are many things to address, but one of the steps, even before what Keva was saying about meeting their different needs, is that you have to understand what the need is, right? And so as an assessment professional, I'm going to come from it from the perspective of that, what is behind the behavioral problems? Because it could be a learning deficit. They're loitering outside, or they're acting up because they can't understand, or there's this huge gap in what they're doing. And so, they're acting out behaviorally. Or it could be that they're fine in terms of their understanding, but they don't have the self-regulation skills to do what they're being asked to do. And that's approaching those children and helping them with behaviors, two different actions. Like you're helping the child with the learning problems, like you adjust what the expectations are for them. With the self-regulation, you're helping them to build self-regulation skills. Or it could be, as Mr. Royce mentioned, there are significant emotional issues that have come from this period, and it could be an emotionally driven problem which is affecting behavior, and that's again a different perspective. So it's really important when you're thinking about the behavioral issues that you see, it's really important to understand what's driving the behavior.
Yeah, great. Dr. Walker?
Sure, certainly. All right. So thank you so much. For those of us who have just joined, I saw some persons joining just now. We're looking at the topic today, improving students' social, emotional, and behavioral engagement. And so my question to our panelists this evening, research suggests essentially that reduced or low student engagement is one of the contributing factors to high dropout rate, especially among students at the secondary school level. So what are some of the strategies? So we're getting to that component of the conversation now. What are some of the strategies that can be used to increase students' motivation to further engage in the teaching learning process? And I think I'll begin with Mr. Royce, because I don't want him to say that we're singling out the males.
No, I think I want the ladies to start with this one. I'm going to be nice and switch it over to the ladies.
Okay.
Fine. I mean, you know what? The answer that I said before in terms of connection, I mean, in terms of motivation and engagement, connection to me is really the answer. It's improving connection for the students to the school, to the teachers, to their peers, right? It's like, and how to facilitate that. And that can be challenging, particularly if there are behavioral issues. But it's trying to foster a culture where teachers are connected to their students, where students feel supported by the school and by the administration, and where they feel connected to their peers. And that's, I mean, in our current school culture, even before COVID, honestly, there's a lot missing in that. And even worse now that they've been out of school for so long, right? So it's being intentional about how to foster those connections and not just focus on like, okay, we're back and so we're going to focus on all the schoolwork that you've missed, but how can we foster an emotional connection through, checking in with students and, giving space for students to kind of share outside of, academics, giving them space to share their own personal feelings or their thoughts, even in the schoolwork, giving them space to voice their own opinions, share their own interests. So it's building those connections is what's going to help kids be more engaged.
Dr. Miller, I hear you, but what about those teachers who will say to you, boy, Dr. Miller, I have 30 students in the class and I really can't get a chance to do all of this. What would you say to them? What strategy would you provide to them? Especially those who, in the Caribbean, especially in Jamaica, I don't know what the situation is like now. Maybe Mr. Cole can speak to that at a later date. But in terms of the student-teacher ratio, what about teachers who just don't have that capacity?
And yes, and I mean, that certainly is an argument, particularly in classes that are definitely overcrowded. It's hard to say because at some point you do actually have to make space for it. Whether it's having a short morning meeting, whether it's allowing feedback through forms, or, giving them space to kind of do a short compliment activity with each other. It can be very short, but you do have to make space. I think the issue apart from time is really that it's a little different culturally. Honestly, it's a little bit different culturally. And that is the harder hurdle, I think, for teachers. It's just that this is not really something that traditionally has been part of our classrooms.
That's true. So Mr. Royce, you ready to go or you want Kiva to go?
All right, I think I'm ready to go now.
All right, so Kiva, we leave you. Thank you so much, Dr. Miller. Go ahead, Mr. Royce.
Kayla, Mr. You don't think you're not special to me. I don't think that for a second. All right, so, I think that what would be good in this situation would be an incentive-based approach. An incentive-based approach, and it doesn't have to be anything that has a monetary value, because the truth is, in Jamaica, we know that as educators, we don't get any money, but an incentive-based approach would be, would add some value to the students, and everybody wants to be rewarded at some point. Having the knowledge that you're going to be rewarded is going to stimulate some interest, and that student will want to become more involved. The parent will want to be more involved, whether at the end of the term that their child name goes on a board to say, all right, out of the 50 days that school was in session for that term, you would have attended 49 times or 39 times, whatever the case may be. There will be some incentive that is attached. Whether at the end of the school year, there's an award that is presented to each grade, possibly, that child is furnished with an award to say, all right, over time, this child will have participated in a number of activities to help enhance the name of the school or the name of the class, whatever it be. Incentives are always something that is good, and the incentives could also extend to the parents. In these times, anybody that gets something, there's some amount of gratefulness towards it, whether it be something that we're looking forward to or not, because it's the times we're living in, and that's just the truth. So an incentive-based approach could be something that should add some value.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Ms. Keval, before we get your response, I just want to say to you that we do have some teachers here who are at the university level. So when you're providing your strategies, let's see how we can also provide some that maybe if they're having those challenges in getting students motivated since COVID and stuff, what strategies would you provide for them at the primary, secondary, university level perhaps?
Right. I do agree with Dr. Miller and Mr. Royce. As Mr. Royce was speaking, it is very much in the camp of the reinforcement strategies. And why I like reinforcement strategy is, as my grandmother would say, encouragement sweeten labor. Everybody like a little bit of encouragement. And so seeing posters with stars and your name in lights, I have seen parents who have just called a grandmother to say, say, him never get no beating this week. And the child is working hard because they heard their name being said in a positive way to other people. Don't forget that we are creatures of celebration. We like our name, we have an ego. And if you can stroke that in some way, because there are a lot of times when we focus on the negative, I like that program, A Ray of Hope on TV, because I'm like, after all of this dreary news and everything is said and done, at least we can have a little positive to walk away with. There must be something positive. Kersey, 2006, she has a book and it's called 101 Positive Principles of Discipline. And I find that for teachers and parents are useful. I've used it in my everyday life. I've used it with parents and their children. I've seen teachers use it. Some of the strategies just work. Here is one example. Connect before you correct.
Wow.
Think about yourself and think about the person that you think can give you a correction in your life. That person has shown you some regard. That person has celebrated successes with you. And so when they come with a rod of correction, you take it from a place that they love you and care for you and is doing the best for you and in your best interest. So sometimes we can't be negative all the time. We have to find room for celebration. Because when it comes time to correct, the children, the persons, the students, whether university or otherwise, are aware that you mean the best for me. Some other like choices. Remember I said about the goalpost? We like autonomy. I like to know that I have the freedom to be. Give me some choices. As a lecturer, I would tell the students, here are your options. You either do the group work, that is one option. Or guess what? I know that you may not like to work in groups because I am one of those people. So guess what? Do the whole work by yourself. I can only take 5 students because then that would be too much to mark. So only 5. First 5 comes, That's it. Then you have the other option. You can fail. That is a choice that you have to make for yourself. Give people the options where they now go, okay, if I don't make it in the first 5, I need to go now then, or I need to find a group of friends that I like to work with, or I am going to fail. These are my options. Give people choices where they feel like I made a choice for myself. I had a say in this. Sometimes we just force things at people. Do this assignment, write this essay. Everybody doesn't like to write essay. Suppose we had said, okay, we're going to have a split. Half multiple choice, half this. All in favor? Okay, let's work it that way. Give persons options. The truth of the matter is, sometimes if you give people choices, you find that they're harder on themselves than you would have been.
And this is true.
Okay.
It's true.
It is very true. So that is a book that we can look at in order to see some of the things. And the last thing I want to say on that, validation and respect.
Yes.
Don't push people's feelings aside.
Yes.
I know you are upset that these are your only choices. I know you are upset because you failed the course and you now have to go do it again in the summer. Validate the feelings. You have a right to be upset. I would be upset too. But here is where we go from here. So validate and respect that the person has a voice. You have a voice in the, so conversation, let's talk about it. Let's reason it through. Whether you're a child or a university student or a lecturer or a principal, Mr. Cole, we all have a say. And so treat us as humans.
Okay,
if I may.
Have to, 1 second, please. In the interest of time, we just have to keep the conversation going. We're almost at the 1 hour mark and the conversations are so rich, but we want to hold true to our promise to have it within the hour. So we'll just go further. Sorry about that, Mr. Royce. Kiva, I know you wanted to ask a question to Annette, but we did promise to keep it within the hour. So just looking more specifically at the strategies that could be implemented by the ministry. And what I liked about the answer to the previous question is the focus on relationship, right? Rather than and validation, rather than and providing option, rather than saying you have to do this. So are you aware, as we relate to social, emotional, and behavioral engagement, are you aware of any policy or programs that the Ministry of Education is currently developing to help students who are behaviorally disengaged to be more engaged in the teaching and learning policy? And if not, can you suggest policies or strategies to the ministry? We'll start with Ms. Miller, then since you wanted to go, Mr. Royce, and then Ms. Reed. Thank you.
I was actually going to suggest that Keva start because I think Keva does work at the ministry, so she might have a better idea.
Keva?
To be honest, I mean, I don't know. I will briefly say, before throwing you under the bus completely, I'll briefly say that I do.
Thank you kindly. Thank you kindly.
You get crushed up by the bus, Miss Reed. The bus run you over.
I think this is bigger than the bus.
Mr. Royce worked in the ministry, you know. Mr. Royce will back me up then, because this is his wheelhouse. The SWPBIS, yes, Mr. Royce?
Yes.
Is something that is there in the ministry. It is school-wide positive behavior, improvement,
intervention, I think, support.
Mr. Royce. School-wide
positive behavior, prevention and behavior support. Something like that.
Something like that. So I just call it Swiss biscuit. I hope they did not hear me.
Yeah, man, it's behavioral interventions.
SWPBIS, a lot of schools have had this placed in there. It's not a Jamaica thing. It's a worldwide thing. I know USA has it in their schools. A lot of them don't do the school-wide. It's just a positive behavior, more like an intervention system kind of thing. And remember, the aim is to prevent as opposed to punish. So they try to get students to speak. Let your voice be heard so that you don't have to punch somebody for them to hear your voice. Let's start the positive. How do you respond to things? How do you work through emotion, problem solving skills, self-awareness, self-reflection? All of that is already built into that process, where the guidance counselors are the key stakeholders in implementing that in the school system. Now, I'm not sure how school-wide it is, but I do know that there are schools that are actually operating with guidance counselors with a plan of action each year. They do risk assessments at the start of the year, how they're going to go about working through. If bullying was a thing last year, how do we work through that going into this year? How do we work through, based on the environment a child might be in, you know, gun violence? How do we work through that in the school? How do we do things that cause children to rap sessions, you know, empowering them on speaking? But last year during COVID, we had another program that was run by Lady Solomon from Ministry of Education. And it was a return to happiness. And it goes back to what Dr. Miller said. This Return to Happiness program, the guidance team at the regional level was trained, and then they now had to teach teachers, because it wasn't a guidance thing. It was a every teacher thing. So a teacher would come into a class and start the class with a check-in. So how are you feeling today? If you could be a weather system, what would you be? And so they could gauge the class. I would be a tornado. I would be a thunderstorm. Oh, I would be sunny. Okay, one bright person in the whole room. Okay, rest of everybody else is feeling dark and gloomy. Okay, what? And then they could do mood songs. They could go about, okay, what was it that causes us to feel? So a good little 10 minutes that could straighten your whole class for the day. We have devotions in the morning. It really could be that devotion time that is used. Get their heads right, get their minds straight, get them to voice where they were at. Nobody just overlooking me as a person. Maths, English, social studies, forgetting my feelings and where I am at, and the fact that nothing you just said came in because I'm not there. My heart is emotional. My head is in turmoil. So it's just a nice little check-in kind of thing. And it's a 6-week program that they can run in a class. They can do it in HFLE in the high schools. Out of guidance, I guess, even at the university level, if you speak to a therapist, they would, because the techniques in there are very cognitive behavioral. So they would be able to work with any student that was going through any kind of turmoil. And so I know those two systems and strategies were placed inside the school system in order. No, the thing is, are teachers using them?
Yeah. Perhaps Mr. Royce can comment in his position, or Dr. Miller?
What I can speak on is that in terms of instituting plans, ministry currently has what is called a boys empowerment thing that is going on. And born out of COVID and returning to school, this program would have been suggested by the ministry. It's really geared towards bringing boys to a place where they can be empowered and demonstrate appropriate behaviors for the classroom and by extension, just for society. This boys empowerment program, I found that our boys, and in most cases, we're always losing our boys, and not just losing them in terms of death, but we're always losing them to all the ills that society has to offer. So this program is really geared towards bringing them to a good place, allowing them to appreciate self, understanding best practices, trying to avoid something that should possibly life-changing. Outside of that, guidance counselors, I can tell you, we have what is called our guidance program that we send out a needs assessment, which is a projection, which is some questionnaires with questions that suggest issues that might exist within the school classroom or the school community. These questions are not just limited to students, but they're limited to they're in parents, the wider society, teachers, just to try and have an understanding of some of the grappling issues. Having garnered this information, we institute programs and policies that will tackle these issues. But one thing I will say, for now, the boys' empowerment program that the ministry has suggested is doing wonders.
Oh,
And I would suggest that for the persons that are on, that this is something that you can try to institute where whatever scope of the educational program that you're in, whether you're at primary or high school or perhaps tertiary, we need to empower our men, and our men are, remember, and I think one of the things that we miss as educators, as boys, we are very reserved in showing our emotion. So once we are able to tap into our emotions as men and as boys, then we should be at a good place.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Dr. Miller? Any
Well,
comments?
since I don't work at the ministry or in the schools, I think it would be difficult. I'm familiar with PBIS because, through when I was in America, it is a very strong evidence-based program. I think, as Keva said, the question is the implementation, especially with the disruption of COVID. And in the implementation of any kind of program, I think it's important that the ministry supports schools and the administration in how to actually have it, not just have the idea of it or a one-time training, but how do you actually have it become a reality? It's a really good program, but it's to have it become an actual reality in the schools.
Okay, thank you for that comment and for all the contributions to that question. I'll hand it over to Mr. Cole for a final question.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hardware. So we are almost at the end of the program, and we have been looking at improving students' social, emotional, and behavior engagement. And so we want our panelists to just provide two practical ways in which our teachers, our educators who are at it working very hard to ensure that students perform and do well, but are challenged because they're seeing increasing cases of behavioral problem. So just to identify two practical ways in which our educators can improve students' engagement at school. So let us start with Dr. Miller.
Sure. I think a lot of things that we talked about are things that we can sort of flesh out. One of the key things, particularly I think now with the transition back to school, is to really focus on having clear, as I think Keva mentioned, clear expectations.
Yeah, that came out.
Clear expectations, and think of it sometimes we have classroom rules, but again, it's sort of making it clear, but also thinking about all the different spaces during the day that are problematic and preempting that by having a very clear stated expectation, if there's before transitions, before talking about how lining up, having rules for how kids go to the bathroom, for having rules for distributing books, all of these things that could be potentially problematic, you need to really think through, particularly because students have been out of school and the norms have been out the window. So having really clear stated expectations, particularly for problematic times and problematic areas, and just kind of reinforcing that is probably one of the best things to do right now.
Thank you. Quite useful. Ms. Reed, your two practical suggestions?
On the back of that, I think one of my greatest things would be for teachers to practice active listening. Because if you hear what's going on, if you hear what's not being said, if you hear what my actions are saying, then you can provide the interventions that I need. And so another thing is help our students to actually start creating better problem-solving skills. Use the classroom, use the activities, use the lesson plans, use the lesson activities, use the videos, all of this. Problem-solving skills, taking responsibility, collaboration, help them to learn these social skills that they might have missed out during COVID, that they might have forgotten. So let's listen and let's help them to actually work with these problem-solving collaborative skills.
I like it. Listen, and I liked what you said earlier about connecting before you correct. That has resonated with me. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Mr. Royce, your two suggestions?
All right, so my two suggestions are, I don't know if Ms. Reed is reading my mind, But that is a good thing. Nonetheless, I will say that two things that I would suggest is, as educators, we need to learn to give students alternatives, give them practical alternatives so they can decide that in my best interest, this is the route that I want to take in dealing with this issue or this situation. Demonstrate to your students at all times empathy and unconditional positive regard. The persons with whom we educate, they need to know that we genuinely care about their welfare,
Right.
and that we are genuinely vested in their interest. And once we're able to do that, I think we should be in a good place.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Royce, Ms. Reed, and Dr. Miller for those recommendations that you have offered to our educators right here in Jamaica and across the world. Dr. Walker?
1 second, I do have a question if we're allowed, if the panelists could give us maybe 5 more minutes.
Okay.
So from S. McLeod, who asks, how can teachers or administrators across the island improve on their social skills while they are transitioning back into the classroom?
Improve
This
on the
is to address-
students' social skills or the teachers who,
Maybe the teachers too. But if S. McLeod could clarify, please. This is to address what is teachers' social skills. Thank you.
That's an interesting question.
Um,
Sorry, Mr. Royce, were you saying something?
No, I was about to say that, you see, as human beings, I believe that in terms of us measuring ourselves, a lot of times we need to sit and do some introspection, look at our lives, gauge ourselves, think about, is this the direction that I would have projected for me to be going? Know that we are coming out of these unprecedented times. Am I at the place that I need to be? Am I at the place where I'm going to be effective to my purpose and my cause? So a lot of introspection, and the most important thing that we need to do, colleagues, is need to be honest with ourselves. If we're not honest with ourselves, then we are going to be losing, not just the students, but we're going to be losing ourselves.
And remembering that teachers are the role models that the students see as well. And so I think in that space, if teachers are going to be the ones to learn to become social agents and demonstrate all this collaboration and problem solving skills and so on, I think they need some capacity building in emotional intelligence. Because remember, just like Mr. Roy said, that reflection is part of being self-aware. Now, when you become aware of you, then that leads you to the social awareness. Because in being aware of you, you become aware of people in your space as well. Who is getting under your skin? Who is getting on your nerves? Knowing you, what do you do now? Do you walk away? Do you do some deep breathing? How do you respond? Because you are more self-aware. It helps you to be more tolerant of others. And you can offer more grace, because the day you get up annoyed, you realize that, oh, others do get up annoyed as well. And so you can offer them some graces. Okay, today is just your day. I remember last week I had a day as well. It's okay. Yeah. And so sometimes we have to just know that this is not a fight. Just walk away. It's okay. So sometimes we have to check in with ourselves. How am I feeling? I was telling one of my kids that I had to do sessions with this week, fact. COVID is gone and we're now becoming more active, so we're less fat, but I want us to be more fat. You know, focus on what is the feeling? What are you feeling? Don't run away from the feeling, because if you run away, you'll start doing things and the actions will start come out and you will sell a wrong impression of yourself.
Yes.
What are you feeling? Then address the issue. Why are you feeling that way? Is it because the principal said this? Is it because you have too much work? Is it because you know the students are back and you feel like you never taught anything? Why, as a teacher, are you feeling this way? And then walk away. Take a break. Take a break to calm down. Take a break to come up with a game plan. Take a break. Take a break to go love up and nice up yourself and feel sweet with your family. And get rejuvenated to come back to the game plan that you might have at hand. So some of us need to actually take a moment to get fat.
Dr. Miller, I saw you had a question.
No. You know, honestly, I was just going to, as I definitely, of course, 100% agree. And that is the way to kind of build on for teachers, for adults, for parents. I mean, I talk to them a lot about this, is that we need to our own emotional awareness. As Kevin mentioned, we need to be aware of what we're feeling because it's really influencing our actions that we talked about initially. Our emotions influence our actions. And if we want to act in a certain way, we need to really identify what's going on internally so that we can adjust what we're doing and not acting out of, you know, ignorance to some extent. So I agree 100% with what Kevin and Sheldon had said.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. So there's another question here. I noticed that some persons were just coming in. So for those who are just coming in, we're actually closing up now. We're looking at students, improving students' social, emotional, behavioral engagement. But there's a question here from Aldine. He's a professor here in Canada. He says, how can a college university professor cater to the emotional, psychological needs of students while teaching online when there is hardly any social presence?
All right.
Well, I don't want to be talking too much, but you know, very quickly, and I tend to like to give real life situations. And while this is a little different, I remember after a point in my life, a few years ago when I was going to Michael, I was going through a period of my life where there was depression, I was going under. And having developed a relationship, a healthy, respectful relationship with a lecturer that would call me. One day I was in class and I was just having a breakdown and I broke down in the class and the lecturer said to me that you're not going to come here from the background that, and I'm from a place, I'm from Spanish Town, you're not going to come to the university and not leave with your degree. And it is those conversations on the phone, a number of them that, I know that for the person that asked the question, you may not be able to call all of your students every single day. But if it is that you can send some empowerment videos, send some quotes, send some things to remind your students that they have a meaning and a purpose, remind them that they can achieve things beyond their imagination. You see, a lot of times we don't need to reaffirm the person with these students and is reaffirming them that you probably had your own experiences and you don't have to go into the details and the intricacies of your personal experience for that to work. But you know, just share some insight, share a story, share something that will reaffirm their trust into the fact that they can achieve and that all is not lost.
Right.
Connect, as Keva said, connect.
And sometimes I know as a lecturer it becomes difficult, but 2020 when COVID came in and we had to transition onto online and the students were used to one way of doing things and we're all of a sudden asynchronous and synchronous and they're like, no, but we don't know. And it was just empowering them that you can. You know this, you're able to read on your own. You're here to read for a degree and giving them some guide. Okay, 6 hours per week is what you should be giving. Giving them information because they knew they needed to read, but they didn't quite know how and how much. I realized I had 60 odd students in a class. And to be honest, I didn't have more than 4 students missing any week. I think because every 10 minutes of first 10 minutes of every session, okay, what's your problem now? And they would talk about admin. and how their IDs and their school fees and their this, and we'd all sit there and we'd make suggestions. Okay, so who is going to be the leader who is going to go into the main office and tell them that you need this? And who is going to write a letter to the dean and do this? Okay, can't help you with that. You just need to find a way to get the books and read. Okay, all right, I understand that. Maybe you should, okay, let's do this deep breathing exercise. It was just 10 minutes for them to just have a voice and just breathe and just, okay, can we start now? All right. And we just went into class, 10 minutes every single class at the start. And I guess they just felt like this was a space that they were heard. I am a human. I am somebody. And so, yes, we can't personally be there, but you make a connection where they feel like, okay, you care about me enough to give me 10 minutes of a 2-hour class. It's not a lot, 10 minutes. If you were seeing them, you would have had to give them 15-minute break time. So, it's just being able for them to see you as approachable and knowing that, okay, if I have an issue, there's some place for me. There's a space for me. Yeah, I don't know if that helps, but it's much like Royce was saying, it's connecting. It's that connection and opening up the space for being approachable. And that doesn't necessarily mean one-on-one, because you may not have the time, like Roy said, but it's opening up where your class becomes an oasis, a little place and a little space where you do your check-ins. How are you feeling? Okay, a lot of you seem this way. All right, I want you to get up. I want you to stretch. I want you to pretend you're throwing all that problem away. Grab it up in a ball, grab it all up, throw it. Okay, no, that wasn't far enough. Come on, do that again. Grab it from your toes, grab it all up. Okay, ooh, that ball seems very heavy. Okay, throw it now. Okay, all right, let's crack on with the class. Just something that helps them to go, all right, I've been heard. I somebody that's a lecturer, because remember, you're a lecturer. You're seen in high regard. You're like close to God. You're a lecturer.
I expected to know everything.
I lectured in England for how many years? You are seen as the you are where I want to go.
Yeah.
So if
You're expected to know everything.
I was there. I had issues as well. I didn't get my school fee paid on time. I had my assignment in late. I am here. I am a lecturer. I have my doctorate. I have my master's. I have they can connect and go, oh, okay, so I can do this. So it's a little connection sometimes. Yeah, be you in the space.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Dr. Miller wants to add, but I know that there are 2 participants who had their hands up.
I think should we take since I think is it Aldian or Aldi went already? Can we just take Diana's?
Yeah. Ms. Miller, you wanted to say something, or
no. I think Trevor and Mr. Royce covered it.
Okay, Diana, we'll take your last question. Oh, you can't unmute.
I asked her to unmute now.
Thank you kindly. Great session. I'm happy that I caught on to pieces of it. I had wanted to, I'm Dr. Davis Smith, President, Catholic College of Mandeville, a teacher training institution in central Jamaica. I wanted to share that we've inserted social emotional learning as a part of the completion of our students. In our graduate program, it is a focus of the Masters in Teaching and Learning is built on social emotional learning, but I'm now infusing it in the undergraduate level. I wanted to respond to the question that was asked, how would one engage as in an online platform? And I'm happy that Kiva went into stated about having a check-in, though it is really a restorative practice approach to have this kind of a check-in sessions. It is something as social emotional learning practitioners that we can use, whether or not it's a face-to-face or it's an online platform. So having shared that, but I thank you for the opportunity to have commented.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Smith. Okay, over to you now.
Dr. Walker.
Dr. Walker.
All right. Such an engaging session. We have essentially done our bid for the day. We want to thank all our panelists for being here and for your time. We are quite on time this time. The last time we went overtime. And so we also want to thank our participants for engaging with us this evening. I'm certain that some of you may have had questions, but you may not have been given the opportunity. If you'd like to send us questions, you can in the chat, etc. So just to close out, we want to thank you again, as I said, and we hope to see you in our next session, where we're going to be discussing the need to collaborate with parents, families to enhance students' success. So we saw some of that discussion coming out earlier, and we think that this is a good segue to remind those who are here this evening that we'll be talking about our very important stakeholder, parents and families. So as we continue the conversation surrounding the debilitating effects of COVID-19 and ways to keep everyone safe, especially our school-age children, please remember to share this session with others. You can find us on different social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, etc. So I want to thank you once again for coming to the 9th session of EduTalk 876 Live. And we're growing, and we hope to see you all again. And remember to share, and again, be well, be safe, prioritize your well-being. Dr. Pickney said the last time, have your Oreo moment. So that's a reminder for our teachers here this evening. Lock up in your room. You don't have to literally eat that chocolate, but have 15 minutes for yourself. All right, thank you again. Take us out, Mr. Cole, with the music. I want to ask our panelists to stay behind just for 5 minutes debriefing.